Hello, welcome to PCMag Live. I'm Dan Costa. He is Max Eddy, and we've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the top tech news of the day. We're going to show you one cool thing, and we're going to answer some of your reader questions. Let's get to the big news of the day, Android Wear. We've been waiting for this to happen. Android has finally come out with a developer kit to bring Android to wearable computers and really make it the standard for wearable computing. The impressive thing here is not that there's a lot of details, because there's not, but there are a lot of partners lined up, and they are out with a variety of solutions before Apple has its say.
Yeah, and there's a lot of partners. Like, we would list them, but it would probably take most of the show. And we're looking at, I think it's the Moto 360 watch, which is coming out soon-ish, and the LG G watch. I thought it was pretty exciting because they actually released a video showing things you could do with it. And personally, I've not really seen the point of wearables, but they make a pretty compelling argument that this could be an extension of the Android experience, that actually using things like Google Now and saying, "Okay, Google," to get directions and plane tickets and things like that.
And the thing that they mentioned in their developer kit is that a lot of applications are going to work with watches sort of out of the box, because they're going to rely on the Android notification system, which is pretty robust. And actually, having worn a smartwatch, various types, I think the notification system is actually where the key value is. Being able to know that somebody posted an update, you got a text message, you've got all sorts of different alarms going off. That, I think, is the usefulness of at least the watch component of wearable computing.
And then using the Google Now to be able to instantly respond to that using your voice, it's very intriguing. But from the security standpoint, I'm a little bit nervous about this, because Google Glass, we've talked about, is just a giant info-sucking machine. How is this going to be any different than that? I'm curious.
You're going to wear it on your wrist. That's how it's going to be different.
Well, yeah, so you won't be able to do the emotion tracking that Google wants to look at. So I'm still leery about this, but it's an exciting thing to look at.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and no doubt we're going to hear more about it at Google I/O. I think we're actually going to see shipping products by Google I/O, at least final prototypes, and not this Photoshop stuff we saw today.
You heard it here first.
That's just a guess. I don't have any inside information. Also announced late last night at the Game Developers Conference, Sony's Project Morpheus, which is basically a VR headset for the PlayStation 4. Sony's had VR headsets before, but they've been kind of low res. This is 1080p, 90-degree field of vision. All that's waiting are the games and, of course, a shipping time and price.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is it might actually come to market before the Oculus Rift, which really stole the show at last year's GDC. It seems like Sony really wanted to rush in there and show that they were also part of this movement. But personally, I don't think that virtual reality's time has really come. We're still seeing very bulky displays, kind of awkward interfaces. I've used the Oculus Rift. It's really cool, but it also is kind of sickening at the same time. But what's
sickening, it's making you sick to your stomach.
It makes me feel ill when I put it on. But it's,
and you're saying that's a bad thing for
anyone watching me, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But what's cool is that now there's tools out there. People can develop virtual reality applications, like that Seinfeld apartment we did a couple of weeks ago. That hasn't been there before. And this might be the weird case where we get the content before the content delivery system really works. So.
Yeah, well, I feel differently about the Oculus Rift. It's a little kludgy, but it's a prototype.
Yeah.
And we're finally seeing the commercialization of VR headsets, and I think the gaming space is where they're going to take off. So I think this is a great development. You can read more about it, of course, on PCMag. Check out the pictures. Those are also very cool. And then also the news on a somewhat more disturbing note.
Very, very disturbing note.
It's Tuesday, so it's Wednesday, so we must have a new Snowden leak. It turns out the latest Snowden leak shows, and we don't know that it's from him, but it's probably from him, is that the NSA has a tool which can capture 100% of a country's voice communications, and they've used it. They used it in 2011. That is kind of revelatory. We knew they were watching everything, but every voice call made inside a country, they haven't said which country, but we're going to get to that in a few seconds.
Yeah, voice calls are interesting because they're very hard to deal with. There's a lot of them. They're not text, so you can't search them. This shows that the NSA has not only beaten the voice problem, but the search and the storage problem, which we saw them doing with metadata. It has a 30-day buffer where they can actually play back every conversation. So if on day 29 you find something irrelevant, you can go back 27, 29 days to find where that was happening before. Really interesting from an intelligence standpoint, but extremely disturbing if you're in the country that the Washington Post would not name for security reasons. There's also some evidence that the NSA has either used it again or is at least budgeting to use it again.
They didn't say, the report says that it's definitely been used once. They definitely know the country, but they didn't tell us which country.
And they definitely said that even talking about this was affecting national security.
So let's just get into it, since there's a hand, everybody wants to know which country it could be. When I first heard it, I was like, oh, absolutely, it's got to be Iran. You did a little bit more work and actually matched up the timelines.
Very, very little more work. So what would we be interested in Iran? Try to match it up with some kind of date. Stuxnet was my first thought, but that happened in 2010. The Olympic Games operation was prior to that. So 2011, the big news story that I could think of was the killing of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. And for that operation, we know that U.S. intelligence was using all sorts of drones. We were using like the maximum ability of U.S. intelligence to confirm that it was the right guy and to make sure it went off without a hitch. If there was ever a time to use an expensive, difficult product, this would be it.
Yeah, and when you really want certainty, you're going to put boots in the ground to actually go and run an action. I think that's actually pretty good conjecture from our security analyst, Max Eddy.
And I totally didn't just come up with that from looking at Wikipedia.
No, it couldn't be. It has to be more than Wikipedia. Let's move on and challenge your skills even more with a reader question. You can send us your reader questions in the comment section on YouTube. You can send us Facebook on Twitter notes. We will answer them live on air. Today's question is a security question, and it's a tough one. A reader told us that while he was on a business trip abroad, he picked up some nasty malware on his Macintosh, which doesn't happen a lot.
It does happen,
but
not
it does
a lot.
happen. He noticed his computer was acting funny. At one point, he says he actually saw the mouse moving on its own and poking around in his files. Max, this is like basically the worst nightmare scenario for malware infestation.
And it actually gets worse because he told us that he heard the people talking on the other end of it, which means that this was a full-on remote access Trojan. So on the one hand, it's really scary because this is like a personal attack. You see your computer doing something that it's not you, and that's scary. But the fact that the hackers were not covering their tracks and that they'd left their microphone on so that they could hear them, that makes me think
a little lack of sophistication on their part.
It doesn't mean that it's
not. But they do have total control over his system.
They do have total control over his system, and that's the big problem, is that there could have been settings changes that you were just not aware of. So the first thing you need to do is scan your computer with more than one antivirus tool to make sure there's nothing left over by the first one. Then you need to scan your backup with more than one antivirus tool. Then you need to completely wipe your computer. And we were talking to some of our security analysts here. We don't think that just using the recovery partition is going to be enough. If someone was able to get like root level access, they may be able to hide some nasty stuff. So you need to completely wipe and reformat the drive and then clean install a new OS. You probably will need the help of an Apple Genius at this point. Once your machine is actually clean, you're going to want to turn on a firewall. The built-in one in OS X will probably be fine. This way you can see if there's any communications going into or out of your Macintosh that are not from you. That's the important thing, is that these things need to communicate with the internet to get instructions and to send information. The next thing you need to do is, obviously, you're going to want to run AV on your computer and keep running it all the time. Get an up-to-date version of OS X so that you can have all the software updates. We saw recently with the SSL pinning issue in OS X that Apple screws up. So you want to make sure you have all the tools working for your benefit. And lastly, and this one's kind of weird, you're going to want to create more than one profile on your computer. You can have one with admin access and one without. You're not going to use that one with admin access for anything other than installing software and making changes.
Yeah.
Or not even installing software, just like authenticating software installation. That way that there's so much less that an attacker could do. It's going to be annoying because you're going to have to authenticate every single change that you make. But I do this and it's paid off in dividends.
And that's really old advice that we used to give people when they were running their Windows systems. We've sort of moved away from that, but it's still good advice today.
And there's even more basic stuff, like if you get a weird link, don't click it, even if it's from someone you trust. Interrogate everything, be worried about what you download no matter what device you're on.
It's interesting, the reader didn't tell us which country he was traveling to, but it really highlights the point that when you go overseas, there is a big business in compromising foreigners' laptops
Absolutely.
and foreigner systems. And for corporate espionage, for identity theft, it's a big, big business. When you travel, you need to secure your communications. Obviously, we've got lots of tools that help you do that on PCMag.com. You can check it out also on Security Watch.
Indeed.
Now it's time for one cool thing. We test thousands of products here in our lab in New York City. Every day we take one thing off the shelf and show it to you live. Today that thing is the Xbox One Media Remote.
It's a lovely little thing.
It is a lovely little thing. What's the price on this?
$39.99.
$39.99. I don't think there's any reason why you would not. If you're investing in an Xbox One, you got to invest in the remote. It's got a nice rubberized surface. It gives you complete control over your device, and you don't have to use your your actual controller to do it. You can use the remote control, which is just, it's a more elegant solution.
Well, you can see already there's one issue here is that it is an IR remote. So if you have something between you and your device, your Xbox, you're not going to be able to do it because it needs line of sight. We also note in our forthcoming review that it only works with Microsoft applications on your Xbox, so it will not work, for example, in YouTube. So you might have to switch around your controllers a little bit. But we really like it. It's a neat little device. It's cheap, and it makes it easier to use this as the all-in-one home entertainment system that it was designed to be.
Yeah, that was the promise. I mean, it was supposed to be more than just a gaming system. They marketed it as such. They promised it was going to be such, but without the media remote, you're still holding a game controller to change channels.
Or you're talking to it, and it's listening to you.
That too, and it is listening to us right now. It'll probably, I think it's got a buffer of this entire show, which will be able to play back and analyze it.
It's horrible.
That has been PCMag Live. Remember to send us your questions on Facebook, on Twitter, and in the comment section on YouTube. Tune in tomorrow, and we will have a brand new show for you.
So long.